Today we are going to start a different text. We just finished up with Mississippi Trial 1955. The thing that I decided to do was to find just a little bit of information about slavery. And I want you to read this independently, and then we're going to talk about it. This nonfiction text, the specific one that I used, it was a graphic novel. And so I wanted to use that because it fit into the Lexile scale for my grade level. Also because a lot of the boys, they are really into the graphic novels, and it's so much rich content and vocabulary that you can find in graphic novels.
In terms of your class and this kind of text, where were they in terms of their preparedness for fifth grade, their ability to handle this kind of text when they came in? What else did you do to make sure that they were scaffolded up to their comprehension level?
Some students are really 10%, some students are 98%. So the ability levels vary. As a whole, they're right in the middle. In Harriet Tubman's time, slavery was strong in the southern states of the United States. In the North, however, anti-slavery campaigns were winning supporters. I think that this is important because so many times teachers will say, you know, well, my students can't read something like this. And that's where we're pushing ourselves as educators to give them more complex text. And as we talked about earlier, it doesn't have to be every single day for the entire year, but definitely giving them access and just putting that into our teaching is something that's important. And with this particular student, if you're allowing the students to read independently, it's nothing wrong with bringing a group of students who have different problems reading or learning disabilities. It's not a problem to then pull them aside as other students are reading independently to read aloud with them or to them so that they can be able to discuss the text. Now, as I was going around, I saw a lot of people writing down Canada. Besides the North, what other directions did slaves flee to while traveling the Underground Railroad? So, excuse me, you have to pay attention to the words that are being used. If it says besides, that means something other than. So I had to jump in because everyone, like, they were missing that word besides, and it was just killing me because, you know, I tried to let everybody struggle with it, and everyone was putting down Canada, and I'm like, why don't you see this word besides? Do you know what that word means? Doesn't that make a difference? So.
Yeah, but that is not just fifth grade. I mean, I run into it in eighth grade. Their comprehension falls apart from prepositions. They just don't understand the relationship between the parts of the sentence or the idea that they're trying to put forward.
And that's because they haven't had any experience with syntax. Syntax hasn't been pointed out to them. If they've been consistently, as part of their instruction, had something just like you were doing, Monica, beginning in second grade, or possibly even earlier, that focuses on prepositions, on how a word like besides changes the meaning of a text, then they wouldn't just blow by it as they do now. And as you said, Tim, in eighth grade as much as fifth, and I'm sure on up.
One thing that I think we're seeing across all these lessons is how easy it would be to assume that your kids know these words, some of them very basic, some of them a little bit more complex. The students will sometimes ask you a question if they're missing the content, like they'll ask you, where is the arrow pointing? What was different about the North and the South? But they'll never ask you, what does to mean? Like, that's just not a question they would think to ask. So it's something that the teacher really has to be aware of, because the kids aren't going to give you a signal that I don't actually know what him and her are referring to in this sentence. They'll never say that.
What do you think a marshal is?
A leader, something like that.
based on the text, what could a marshal be? Just anybody, Keelian?
Maybe someone who has to deal with the, like, who helps with the station. No. I think, at first I used to think they used to deal with the government, sort of.
Where's the text? So let's go back to the text to see what a marshal could be.
They were so resistant at first. They didn't want to look at the text again until you really made them.
Right, and that's a big difference. That's a very important difference, because instead of just letting them take wild guesses until somebody goes, oh, I remember an episode of Gunsmoke, Marshal Dillon, right? I mean, until they started just throwing stuff out, you immediately made them go back and find the evidence, because the answer's there.
So what you noticed with the word marshal was that the students were reluctant to go back to the text. So I had one student saying, well, I used to think that a marshal was, something or the other, but not once did he go back in the text. So my responsibility as the teacher is to make sure that I redirect them back to the text to make sure that they have evidence to support what they're saying.
Yeah, and an important thing here is that you're not just expecting them to pull the literal words from the text, you're also expecting the inferential piece, which was when that student said that they could arrest someone. Then they made the logical leap of, okay, so that means that they're a law enforcement person, kind of like a police officer. That means the role of a they took those steps, they made those connections, mentally, that were inferential connections, not just literal, not just, oh, it says right here that they're like a policeman. So that's that piece that I hear criticism of the Common Core is, oh, all you're asking them to do is find the answer in the no. You're asking them to think about what they're reading, not just find the answer.
And how it relates. And I think that for so long, I might have taken for granted that the students just knew what these words were. But as they're answering questions, I'm seeing that they really don't get it. They don't understand what this word is saying or how it's used in the context. And I know that they can get it, but it's my job to pull it out of them.
So where is your school in terms of the Common Core standards?
So we have some schools in our district that are early adopter schools that they call, where they have been doing different lessons with Common Core, trying to implement it. And with my particular school, we have a team of instructional leadership teachers and administrators who go to these professional developments, and they're learning about Common Core. So we're in the early stages of it, and I'm sure that next year we'll be really fully immersed in it. And they've been using some of these videos throughout the district to critique and talk about and have professional development conversations around.